So as I've wrestled now with my own life and my own walk with Christ, and I'm looking for new language that captures for me what it means to be fully devoted as a follower of Jesus, and to be fully devoted to being fully human as a Lakota person in my own community. So now I'm building a sweat lodge on my property, and I'm going to invite people to come, and we're going to sit in that super duper hot sweat. And we're going to feel pain, and we're going to wish we weren't there. And we're going to have to reflect on the frailty of our humanity and the goodness of God as we consider what does it mean to love Creator? What does it mean to love our neighbor as we're feeling these things? And I'm dancing at our powwows because I want to dance my prayers for the people. We have so much suicide and so much brokenness and trouble with alcoholism and domestic violence and poverty. The statistics are off the charts in our Indian community. The American dream is not a good story. It's still the American nightmare for us. Who's going to take that story back? You can't be a Christian until you reject your culture and your spirituality and your ceremonies. Who's going to take that story back? Who's going to stand with us when we're resisting ongoing federal government policy to remove us from our land, to steal our oil, to bury uranium on our property? Who's going to stand with us? Who's going to rewrite that story in America? Because frankly, most of you don't give a rat's patootie about Indian people. You just don't. You got so many worthwhile, noble things that you're engaged in your everyday life that really you don't have time for us. And I don't blame you. You don't have time for us. We're like on the edges of your American sort of myopic sort of imagination. So to see my friends dancing and singing tonight, for a lot of you that you've probably never seen that before, unless you've been to a powwow or you live near a reservation perhaps. We used to do these conferences where we had drumming and singing on the stage in our native Christian gatherings, and people would just flip out like, what are you bringing that Indian culture on a Christian worship platform? That's not part of the biblical story. And who's going to settle the conflicts in your communities? I've been hearing about Chicago, about all these deaths, all these shootings, and other cities around our country. Maybe we need to take back some of that story. And maybe if it's not the story that needs to be redeemed, maybe around the edges in terms of the philosophic constructs that we use to convey that story, that binary sort of dualism that takes the story and it reduces it to these manageable propositions that say you're in or you're out, you're saved, you're hellbound, you're a Christian, you're not, you're redeemed, you're unredeemed, you're sacred, you're secular, you're natural, you're the flesh. All these binary dual. Maybe if we took out those kinds of dualisms and came back to notions of the ambiguity and beauty and wonder and mystery of the story. And we redeem the story. And Jesus comes and he walks among us as a cornrowed hip-hop young dude. As a gray-haired, pipe-smoking old Swede. That Jesus comes and Jesus makes himself known among us. And the story lives on because the story is an organic living story. It didn't stop with Luther and Calvin and all those old dead white guys. It continues to live on, but that story lives itself out in other stories. And CCDA is a story. When you go home, you are a story. Let's live out that story more authentically. Let's redeem the story before we begin to get into some of the complexities of community development work and all the important dynamics of doing that well. So here's this last story. My friend Adrian Jacobs is a Cayuga, and he wrote this. It is out of this seedbed of honesty, forgiveness, and humility that an indigenous Christianity can grow. An indigenous Christianity that seeks the pure respect of the treaty-making nature of Native people. This is a Christianity that seeks the least in its midst as having a legitimate voice. This is a Christianity that listens like a brother and fights like a warrior for the vulnerable in its midst. It is a Christianity that is not afraid to laugh at itself and at the pretensions of leadership. It is a Christianity that believes we are stronger as a group and that humbly relies on others for support and correction. The journey out of colonial abuse begins with the word no. No, I will no longer be a peon in your game. No, my identity is not given to me by you. No, you will not think for me and tell me how I should feel. We must embrace our history. To do justly, we must tell our stories and express all the pain of our history. You will hear our bright hopes and our painful deaths. Weep with us and sing with us. The pain will be so deep, its only consolation is in our Creator. The great sin against our dignity is answered by a love that brings arrogant violence to its knees. This is the message of the blood of Jesus that speaks better than the things of Abel. So mitako all my relatives, who's going to take back those stories?